Good morning, guys. Today we're going to talk a little bit about generalization and application of skills with ABA therapy and autism. It's very important. I want you to imagine this scenario, okay? You got two schools of thought going on here. In my experience, living with autism and being in the service system, delivery system, I've had two experiences and a very wide range of experiences. So my first experience was with a 19-year-old DSP who was working on social skills with me. And that was my primary source of care. And now my primary source of care is with a late 20s or early 30s bcba. I have two behavior analysts, and one's a bcba. The other has a master's in ABA, just hasn't sat for the exam yet to become a bcba. So I've got a totally different school of thought going on right now. I want you to think about how someone with autism thinks. And so here I was, I've got the two differences. Down here, you've got this 19-year-old DSP, and up here, you've got this 30-year-old BCBA with a master's degree in ABA therapy. And they're working on two completely different opposite ends of the spectrum of social skills, right? So that's very important to understand. And so what happened is I was somewhere in the middle of those two people. So I'm somewhere in between the 19-year-old DSP and the 30-some-year-old BCBA. And so when I was working with the 19-year-old DSP, I had to generalize and apply to work on what they were working on. So for example, a 19-year-old DSP had goals for me like order my food at the restaurant, at McDonald's, at the counter, make a grocery list and go shopping at Walmart to find stuff on the shelf at Walmart. For the purpose of just like navigating the grocery store. And those are skills that I had been doing since I was, about 10 years old. And then here I was 20 something, 25, 27, 28, working with this DSP on navigating the grocery store or ordering my food at McDonald's at the counter. So here I spent years with this 19-year-old DSP, but I was in the middle and he was down here. So I had to generalize and apply down to pretend to be lower functioning and to learn those social skills at his level where he was at and where he was teaching at his school of thought. Now, I'm not saying, this is important, I'm not saying that his social skills weren't as good as mine or even better than mine, but I'm saying what he was taught to teach me was lower functioning than what I was at. I ended up spending years pretending to be lower functioning than what I was. And eventually, after you spend so many years pretending to be lower functioning, you become it. So you generalize and apply down to become lower functioning than what you are. And so years ago, before that started, I was going out to bars, I was going out to restaurants and like socializing with people, trying to meet people, trying to learn how to date, trying to learn how to have relationships in person, healthy relationships in person, and all of the above. But because I started generalizing down and applying down, I lost some of that functionability. And I started to become more codependent on other people. And I had this learned helplessness because I was spent so much time pretending to be lower functioning. And when you have to pretend to be lower functioning in order to qualify for services or in order to get your 19-year-old DSP to work with you, you eventually develop learned helplessness because you learn that you shouldn't be able to do things on your own and you should let someone help you do stuff for you. And so that's very important. Now, on the opposite end of that spectrum, I've got this 30-some-year-old BCBA working with me, and we're working on things like how to talk to people, how to form relationships, how to make friends, how to get out in the community and socialize with people, and all the above. And that's actually going really great. So now here I am in the middle, but this BCBA is up here, way up here. And so I'm able to generalize and apply up now to be able to work on the skill set that she has for me and she's working on with me. So that's very important to understand and to remember. I generalize and apply up in order to work with my BCBA, and I was generalizing and applying down to work with my DSP. So there's a huge gap between 19-year-old DSP and 30-year-old BCBA. So how do we bridge that gap? Because unfortunately, most adults in the spectrum, their primary source of care is not with the BCBA just yet. I know we're advocating and we're working towards getting there and trying to get adult services for behavior analysis and ABA therapy. And we're making progress. but we're not going to get like 30, 40 hours a week of ABA with the BCBA. So adults with autism's primary source of care is going to come from their DSP. So how do we bridge that gap between 19-year-old DSP with no education or high school education to 30-year-old BCBA with a master's in ABA therapy? We have to teach people, we have to start teaching DSPs behavior analysis, in my opinion. So because our primary source of care comes from the DSP, we need to spend a lot of our time having the BCBAs train the DSP. So in this current model, in the current landscape of disability services, for developmental disability services, we don't have a good ABA model for adults. So yes, in the state of Indiana, I have the autism Medicaid waiver. And I get a BCBA working with me as a behavior analyst, and I get a DSP working with me on social skills. I don't have the traditional ABA model for children where I've got the BCBA and the RBT working in conjunction as a team. And so somehow we have to bridge that gap between the BCBA and the 19-year-old DSP, and the DSP needs to be trained by the BCBA and function as the RBT. So somehow you're having to, context is king. We have to create this model for adult services in the landscape of adult services where DSP is functioning as RBT until we can get the system changed over and actually get adults living and functioning and thriving in the same system as children that with developmental disabilities thrive in. And so the best thing we can do right now is we can train the 19-year-old DSP on how to provide ABA therapy. And that comes from being trained by the BCBA and being supervised by the BCBA. So what I would personally like to see is more companies that are behavior analysis companies hiring DSPs to work with them. So like right now in the state of Indiana, your DSP comes from a separate company than your behavior analyst comes from for adult services. And that's creating a gap in level of care. And your primary source of care comes from the DSP and not from the behavior analyst. And so it's going to be really important as we move forward to bridge that gap, right? So we need to talk about how we get the training for the DSP to become the RBT and function as the RBT and work in conjunction with the BCBA. Because if we don't, people like me that are higher functioning, I use that term loosely, but people like me that are higher functioning on the spectrum are going to be generalizing and applying down and practicing skills at a lower level. And then they might just end up sitting in their parents' house all day long doing nothing because they've basically been taught that they have to be lower functioning in order to even get services or they're able to work with the people that they are actually supposed to be working with. So this is a very important topic that I'm very passionate about. And, I'd like you to hit that subscribe button, subscribe to my channel, and tell me more about what you think about this ability, generalization, and application of skills down and up and the gap between BCBA and DSP. So thanks for watching and have a great day.